So lovely to see you. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you would put your name and let me know if you're here, I will give you a Zoom link at the end if you want to hang out and chat about all things Hygge and how we can infuse our homeschools with Hygge, especially in this season. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world. We actually had a gorgeous day today. It's blue skies, it's bright, it's clear, it's all the things that it hasn't been for the last few weeks. It's been slump month. We've entered into slump month, as I call it. I've heard it called that, or called the January blues, the winter blues. Reality is, it's a challenge for everybody, but as homeschool moms, we tend to notice it a bit more. I think because we're noticing it with our kids, we start to get bored. It's a post-holiday thing. There's less sunshine. We might already be affected by seasonal affective disorder. Maybe we experienced full-on depression in the winter, or we experience seasonal affect. If anybody has had those experiences, let me know, because how I engage the conversation that goes forward will be very much influenced by your comments in the comment section. So I'll try and read or pay attention to that every once in a while, just to make sure that I'm addressing your practical concerns. Now, if we haven't met, I'm Teresa. I'm Teresa Wiedrich. I am the homeschool life coach at capturingthecharmlife.com. That's my website. And you're going to see me all over the internet under the words Homeschool Mama Self-Care, because once upon a time, I wrote a book. 2018, 19, something like that. I wrote it in my fruit orchard with the chickens pecking my toenails in the summer. And I wrote a book that I both dedicated to the homeschool mom, and really for her encouragement, but also mine. I was speaking to me, as all authors do. They speak to themselves as they write their books. And I dedicated it to the ones from whom I learned about learning. And it was my homeschool kids, Hannah, Madeline, Rachel, and Zach. And to my nurturers and my encouragers, Jim, my husband, Mariana, my good friend, and my mom, Patricia. And to my co-travelers, and that's you, those homeschool mamas who are choosing to thrive, not just survive. And I've learned over the last 3 years, as I had the book published and I stepped into the online world, never did that before, and I started a podcast and discovered I loved working inside my closet, meeting new people around the world and encouraging other homeschool moms, that I also wanted to create a construct of supporting other homeschool parents, and that was through life coaching. And so I've spent the last few years trying to determine what ways can I serve. And so my goal is to serve you. And so whatever your specific goals are, your specific challenges, I encourage you to share with me specifically. Or you can join me in the Zoom after this chat, but you can also connect with me one-on-one, where you and I are just sitting down to have a chat about whatever challenge you have. And this last week, it was a real delight, after almost 3 years of having had my book in the world, to be received by christianbooks.com, which is kind of like the Amazon of the Christian world. So it's a big deal. And I had a lovely conversation with Amy Otto, who is just such a lovely soul, through christianbooks.com's homeschool, the element of their homeschool realm, her podcast, or their podcast, called Homeschool Compass. And it's been such a pleasure chatting with them, but also I appreciate the support that they put behind my book, for sure. And I say that because I wanted to introduce you, first of all, to what we're going to talk about. So Homeschool Hygge, it can go in so many different directions. So many different directions. I would love to hear what you think Homeschool Hygge means, or what you would imagine it to be. Very quickly on, I discovered that Hygge, which according to Merriam-Webster means the term of coziness, or like an element or character quality of coziness. And to me, as I've homeschooled for longer years, I've discovered that homeschooling, if I'm really embracing what I need, who I am, what my kids need, who they are, and learning what is an education anyway, what really is an education, and how do I include that in my home so it works for all of us. When I do that, I'm moving toward cozy. I'm always moving toward more comfort. It feels more home. What about you? What's your experience of that? I'd love to hear your thoughts too. So this is my experience after, it's not quite 2 decades of homeschooling my 4 kids, but I have 4 kids I have 4 kids, one that's about to go into high school, and my 3rd daughter is about to graduate, and my other 2 have already graduated. They're already in post-secondary school. So it's been a long time. I've been homeschooling for a long time. And some days when I'm on Instagram or I'm on Facebook, I think to myself, I should have another child because this homeschooling thing is super fun. And then I think to myself, no, I don't think I'll do that. So instead, I'll support you in your homeschool stories or your homeschool journeys. So here's what we're going to talk about today is Hygge. And why Hygge now? I think I referred to the slump month, and I think it's really important that we actually be proactive at this time of year, because slump month means typically for a lot of families that homeschool families that we decide at this time of year either to change curriculum, buy very expensive curriculum, or at least shift the curriculum that we've got, completely throw out a routine, because whatever was what we were doing doesn't feel like it's what should be or what's working anymore. So then we ask ourselves, it's not working. So we'll buy new curriculum, or we'll adopt a new methodology, or we'll sell a child. No, we won't do that. No, we shouldn't do that. But sometimes it's a bit tempting on some days. Can I hear an amen? But we do radical things at this time of year. This is the time of year people burn out. This is the time of year people put the kids back to school. This is the time of year that we ask ourselves why we signed up for something that's so hard, or at least can be boring. Sometimes it can be boring. And so what are we going to do about that? Well, first of all, acknowledge the reality. You are not alone. You are not alone. There are so many other homeschool parents that are feeling those feelings right now. In fact, if I haven't already mentioned it, someone had said in the last few days, I'd seen it in the general media, that this is considered to be, according to research, the hardest week all year long is this past week. And I'd be very curious as to why that is. But it certainly seems believable. And so we have to actually acknowledge first that this is a reality. And then the second is be proactive and actually come up with a plan. Okay, so bookmark that thought for a minute, because I want to address another reason why I think it's super important that we want to infuse Hygge into our homeschools right now. And it is seasonal affective disorder, which is kind of a tie-in to what I just spoke to. So seasonal affective disorder, or seasonal affective affect, it really just means that you're very affected by the lack of sunlight or vitamin D that you're absorbing into your skin. Because if you're with me in the Northern Hemisphere, somewhere between September or October and February or March, we really just have a whole lot less sunshine, and that affects our mental health. It's hard to tell when you are moving into a depression, or when you're just feeling the effects of the seasonal shifts. It's actually hard for us to know for ourselves how difficult something is. Sometimes someone outside of us has to say, hey, I don't think you're doing okay. What should we do? Sometimes that means we need medical help, or we need some person outside of us to help direct traffic in here. I've been there myself, postpartum with one of my girls. I didn't recognize it. My physician husband did. And he said, things don't quite feel right. And not even that many months ago, him and I were talking about that time in our family life. And I remember that this was before I homeschooled. I remember that we'd hired a homeschool child who had just graduated to help us look after the kids or to clean the house during the summer. And that was one of my first experiences with a homeschooled family. And I just thought, well, this girl, she can do anything. She's the youngest of four and just so competent. And so, yeah, sure, I'll hire someone to hang out with me during the summer. And I said to myself to look after the kids. In the end, I wanted to be with my kids when I was awake, when I wasn't napping with my baby. But she ended up doing a lot of cleaning. She actually said to me at the end of summer, you're going to be fine. The house will be clean even after I leave, I promise. She was wrong. I've never had a full-time housekeeper except for those few months. And it was a very clean house, and it's never been clean since. Not like that. So I digress. But I come back to the original point, and it is that my husband and I are chatting about that summer because he says to me, that was the reason we hired her, is that you were really, really tired and you were really feeling off and kind of sad and teary all the time. And so we hired her so you could hang out with Rachel and just sleep when you needed to, just enjoy all those baby cuddles with your third baby and learn how to cope. Obviously, not everyone has the opportunity to hire a house cleaner, a full-time house cleaner that looked over the kids occasionally, and I haven't always either. But for that summer, we could, and that was really useful. But the other thing that was really useful was to go on antidepressants. To go on antidepressants for, I can't remember how long, if it was 6 months or 9 months, but it was really useful. I didn't feel inside of myself that I would have needed to go on antidepressants or hire a housekeeper or get help at all. I just thought, no, I'm fine. I'm just really kind of sad and easily angry. I'm fine. As we do, as moms, we tell ourselves, we good. We can do this. We can keep doing the thing. We don't need to do anything for ourselves. That may or may not be why I wrote the book and wrote it for myself. So I've learned for myself that indeed you don't always notice when you're being affected by something like seasonal affective affect or a seasonal affective disorder or just full-on depression, because after this many years, these last few years have been pretty intense for almost everybody in various forms for various reasons. But many people have been very deeply affected by relational shifts or by just really big things happening, grieving loss of either their health or a loss of a family member, or you fill in the blank. So take it from me. And I've shared my story because I want you to hear that this is very common to be challenged this time of year by those things. And so I encourage you to be proactive. If you sense or you wonder if maybe you should be seeing someone professionally about it, then I encourage you to do that. And if you wonder, but you're not quite sure, you want a little support, maybe you want to be able to address some of those big emotions that you're dealing with in your homeschool, that's why I'm here. So you can always connect with me and find out if that's the right thing to do. If we haven't met before, then maybe I haven't also told you before that I was a registered nurse before I was a mom, and I worked in the perinatal realm, so postpartum and pediatrics and labor and delivery and that sort of thing. Okay, so the other thing that I want to make sure that we speak to is that there's a cumulative effect because of the seasonal shifts, the slump month energy, the boredom of homeschool, all the things, and also your period. Someone had said something yesterday to me on Instagram in the DMs that we don't talk enough about premenstrual syndrome and homeschooling. I have in my book, and I have for a reason. Really just spoke about literally everything. And if you're wondering if I spoke about sex too, yes, I did. I talked about it all because I think we don't get real enough as homeschool moms in how to support each other. But one of the things I spoke to that I've spoken to many times is that we don't want to just assume that we can do the same thing all month long. Every day of the month is just the same. Our routines should be the same no matter whether there's a full moon, no matter whether or not we have a husband that's working away from home, or we have lost a partner, or we have our periods. We need to plan for the PMS days. In fact, if you have the capacity to just shut things down for a day or two or three, then say, okay, this is the time of my month where I know I'm going to get more reactive, or I know I'm going to get more weepy, or I know I'm going to get foggy, or you fill in the blank. But when you know that you're at an ebb and you feel it and other people identify it and you don't have as much internal capacity to deal with all that, accommodate for it, plan for it. So a few ways that I do it is by, no, I don't think I have it here, but putting a reminder in my phone. In fact, there's PMS trackers that will help you to keep track of your period and start to track your moods or start to track your physical symptoms so that you have a clear sense of how you're engaging on different days. Ooh, I'd love to do research. If I could do research on anything, I think it would be super interesting to find out how effective we as homeschool moms can really show up with our homeschooled families on the premenstrual days. Maybe it's just me, but I'm going to go with there's a research study there. And I haven't even touched on perimenopause, which I do in the book, because I think that's another element that we definitely don't speak to in the homeschool community. Now, a little show and tell, okay? So when we talk homeschool hygge, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking candles. It's a candle that my husband bought me for Christmas. So pretty. Dark rose. Labdanum? Anyways, it's very pretty. So I light a candle every morning with my morning routine. And I get my journal out. I do a little inspirational reading, meditating, praying before the sun is even up. That practice of creating a morning routine was challenging when my kids were really young. In fact, it was almost next to impossible. Somebody would be always interrupting, or somebody would be sliding out of bed with me or waking me up with a cup of coffee asking me if we were going to homeschool mom because I was so tired. We had different experiences at different seasons of our homeschool, but I have learned very important, no matter what season you're in, to try to create a morning routine, even if all you can do is just get 5 minutes. Or even if it didn't work today, and it didn't work tomorrow, and it didn't work in a few days, just try, keep practicing. Because the thing with kids, especially when you're homeschooling them, they become very accustomed to having you with them, which is really good. And it's excellent for the attachment thing. And also, it means that they're accustomed to having you with them all the time. So they assume that at all moments of the day, you are available. Can I hear an amen? I know a homeschool mom that's challenged by going to the bathroom, and her daughter was 18 years old when she was still knocking on that door, and she has good boundaries. And her name is Teresa. I remember this just a few years back where my 18-year-old, now 22, was knocking on the door saying, "Mom, I need to talk to you." And I'm like, "Girl, I'm in the bathroom." So if my 18-year-old daughter is interrupting me in the bathroom, I'm going to go with a couple of your kids, your younger kids, are also interrupting you there. And it takes a practice, a repeated, ongoing practice to let the kids know that maybe, now this might not apply to you, but maybe you don't want to be interrupted when you're on the toilet or when you're eating or when you're having a quiet afternoon time and you establish an afternoon quiet reading time, or you fill in the blank. Kids are used to having you there, and that's a great thing, and it's wonderful for our connection and attachment with them and for them. And also, we have to create those boundaries. We have to repeatedly create the boundaries, establish the boundaries, and repeat, 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 so that we can actually get some of that quiet space, like our morning routine. So one of the things I wanted to share with you, which is a bit of a show and tell, is what I consider my Hygge infusion of coffee mugs, which in the last few weeks is my tea mugs, because you can hear I've had a virus that just will not leave my lungs. But this is a beautiful mug that one of my girls gave me at Christmas, and there's something about collecting mugs over the course of time that is pretty special to me, that feels like a cozy, comfortable thing. Candles and tea. Is there anything more Hygge? Just stop for a moment and actually have a drink of tea. So coincidentally, my husband bought me this one for Christmas too. And this one, there's something about the colors. If you see any of the photos of my home, you'll see that I have a lot of blues and a lot of greens. And I live in the mountains, so there's a lot of blues and there's a lot of greens. I live right next to a river, and I love the colors. So surrounding ourselves with colors that we love, wearing colors that we love, that is a form of cozying kind of Hygge. Even the scents that we have. This took me years to get into this. I think it was the second season of my podcast, I had a gal named Kristen Mercer who sells Young Living essential oils. She and I had a chat. I'd interviewed her about her creativity in her business and how she homeschools. And she and I had a chat about essential oils. And okay, I was a little skeptical, straight up. I'm the kind of gal who's kind of skeptical about things like that. And yet, especially in the last few weeks, but over the last few years, I have learned that actually this stuff is pretty powerful to influencing how we can feel. The last few weeks, I've been using a bowl of steaming water every single morning and night to keep my sinuses clear with something called either Thieves essential oil, which can also be found as a cleaner. It is absolutely beautiful as a house cleaner, but oddly, you wouldn't put house cleaner drops inside a bowl of steaming water for you to breathe in or inhale. But you would if you smelled this stuff. This is just like peppermint oil and cinnamon, cloves, and I forget what else. But it's a beautiful house cleaner, and it also really helped to open up my sinuses. And then another one called Digitize, I think it was called. Oh, this is the Thieves right here. And you can't scratch and sniff, but it is amazing. And, that's for when you're feeling ill. And I know how many of us have been ill in the last few weeks. It's been remarkable, the amount of, or number of viruses going around. But, lavender on a regular day. Lavender is very soothing, relaxing. We have so many possibilities for essential oils. But in the evenings, when I usually after dinner do a little yoga practice, because I'm of the age where it's not an option anymore, I need to stretch out. And so when I'm doing my yoga practice, I put on my diffuser, and when you see this lit up, it just looks like a little candle flame. And then there's like some, steam coming out with some essential oils, and it is just the most beautiful fragrance and sets a lovely ambiance with a couple candles as I'm doing my yoga. That's something you can do in the morning with the kids. Have you done a yoga practice or prayer practice or meditation in the morning with your kids? in your morning routine. That is one of the things that I've loved the most, is that morning time after the kids have eaten, most of them, and then we all sit in the family room on the sofa with our blankets. I told you to bring your cozy blanket. This is mine. This to me is like, it's with me summer and winter and fall and spring. It's with me all the time, but especially in the winter. I want to be cozied up with a hoodie or a cozy blanket, and we sit in the family room with our read aloud in the morning, a basket of things that we might dabble in, like for me, I really like fine arts, so then I'll put a book of Impressionism, or I'll put a book of classical music and learning the different eras, or maybe a poetry book, or a drawing book, an art book. I'll include different things like that inside of a basket, have the candle continuing after my morning routine, and have a little time for us to stretch out. We could do a loving kindness meditation or a prayer, and that starts our day. Talk about cozy. Now, meanwhile, the non-homeschooled world is like, man, that homeschool thing is too much work. And truth be told, some days it feels like it is. And other days, we're like, are you kidding? We're like moving to all things Hygge. Things are just getting cozier as we learn to release unrealistic expectations, as we deschool our homes, as we learn how to address our big emotions and instill boundaries in our relationships, as we learn to speak lovingly and kindly to ourselves. We're moving to Hygge. This is not uncomfortable. This is a beautiful family life. Another sip of tea. Okay. So, what did I want to share? Yes. If you have met me in coaching at any point, you will recognize this. This is a kaleidoscope. It's one of those kids' kaleidoscopes where if you look into it, you can see different colors, different shapes, and as you just shift just a wee bit, you get a different color, a different shape, a different pattern. And I like to use this as an example, a reminder to us that we sometimes need perspective. We need a perspective shift. And mostly, oftentimes, during this time of year, we are most definitely needing a perspective shift. For instance, if we want to move to cozy, if we want to move to all things Hygge in our homeschool, then some of the most important things that we need to do are to ask us a couple questions. Ask ourselves, is how we're doing homeschooling right now working for us? Not, is it like the right thing to do? Are we doing it right? No. Let's just throw that question out. I mean, is it working for you? Does it feel good? Does it feel like, I love this. I'm creating these wonderful memories. We're learning so many cool things together. I am seeing my child light up with energy and curiosity and play. Does it feel good for you? Are you burning the candle from two ends, as they say, or are you depleted? Or are you building time into what you need? Are you making sure you're looking after yourself in some form? Just 15 minutes, even if you have 12 children at home, and I know one of you almost does, that you have a lot of kids at home, a lot of responsibilities. You have volunteer expectations, maybe from your church or a community. Maybe your husband's asking you to do certain things, or you've had a job, a part-time job, which is common, and homeschooling as well. And you're just feeling like there are way too many things going on for me to sit down and have a cup of tea and just contemplate whether this is working for me right now. And I get that. I really do get that. I've been there. Until you decide that you really don't like what you're doing or something has to change. And that's often this time of year that people are feeling like something has to change. And sometimes it's really big stuff that has to shift. Like there's some very large relationship challenges that we're dealing with. Maybe it's with your partner and you love that person, but how you're relating with each other is not healthy. And since your children are the continual audiences of that relationship, you know that you should not continue doing what you're doing. Or maybe there's some dynamic with a parent or a friend or a sister or somebody close where it's depleting you of a lot of energy and you don't know how to engage that relationship. You don't want to totally cut them off, or maybe you do, or maybe you have, but you don't want to necessarily create a break, but something has to change and they're not willing to do it, or you don't know how to accomplish it. Those relationships, whatever boundary breaking type challenges that you have, they're depleting you of a whole lot of life. And that right there is what I'm speaking to. Those really big moments like boundary breaking things or relationship challenges that you're having, or just, I'm really tired of reading something right now. I am so done with this book or with this math workbook or this curriculum or the way that we're doing it, or I'm just bored by the routine. Whatever it is, this is the season where we feel this huge compelling to make a shift. So I'm going to ask you, probably the thing that you're thinking about as I say something, when I speak about this, whatever that is, what is that? Can you put that into words, or can you write that in your journal? If it never changed, what would be the quality of your life? But what if it did change? What would you want it to move toward? What would you want to look or have it look like? What would you want your life to look like? How would you want to feel in your life? How would you want to do things differently? Imagine what your life would be like if that was resolved. We have these beautiful opportunities when something really big happens in our lives, or something unpleasant happens, or unpleasant and not even really big, just a slump season that makes us go, kind of done with this boredom, or I'm done with this routine, whether it's big or small. We have these opportunities to shift perspective. So right now, this is definitely an opportunity for you to decide whether you're going to continue doing the thing you've been doing or make a shift, or ask someone, a good friend, to get perspective, or connect with me. Can you find a way to think differently about what the scenario is right now? Okay, I'm going to lighten up a bit. All right. I do want to do something that oftentimes when I'm doing homeschool coaching, at the end I'll ask about the biggest insight that somebody's had, but also let's talk about your homework. What can you do at home or like when we're not together, to do so that things can shift for you between the time we talk again? I love that. One homeschool mom to another giving them homework, especially because I have always been self-directed learning, mostly. No, actually I wasn't. I was very classically homeschooled until I didn't like it anymore. But anyways, I wanted to share with you from my book this little part or little story about homeschool mama doing the homeschool hygge. So these two words to me go together like apple and pie, Italy and pizza, fireplace and book, beach and margarita. Nothing like a cold day to entice us to the sofa with a few cozy blankets and our read-alouds or workbooks. Light the warm, burnt orange candles, start a fire in the fireplace, and turn on Spotify to a classical composer. The first day of frost arrived last week. The puppy's water froze. The chickens hesitated to leave the coop. I hesitated to walk the puppy under the most almost touchable morning cloud cover. It was so low. Snow flurries were forecast for the morning, and the blue sky was white by lunchtime. The kids found their winter gear and were outside building a snow dog companion for our puppy. They also made a couple snow forts and their first sledding trail of the season. The seasonal shifts draw us to Hygge, just as our monthly hormonal changes do as well. Seasonal and hormonal shifts are the big yellow triangular signs that tell us to slow down and do the homeschool Hygge. Hygge is defined by Merriam-Webster as a quality of coziness that makes a person feel content and comfortable. Hygge is all about being in the moment, feeling completely relaxed, letting go of the hectic world around you, either alone or with loved ones. No phones and computers allowed in these magical moments. I share with you, if you haven't already accessed it, the Homeschool Hygge checklist. And so I'm going to assume that you already have it. And I'm not going to go through the list of Homeschool Hygge tips, but I give you 20 tips in this checklist. Like getting a kitty cat. I'm telling you, animals have been the one of the most cozy aspects of our homeschool. And although they definitely are a lot of work, sometimes a lot of money, and they make things messier, they're very cozy, and they make kids love sitting on their bed with their math workbook, a cup of tea, and a kitty cat. And I talk about tea and candles and all the things you would expect to hear, but I also talk about your morning skincare routine and getting to know neighbors and neighborhood walks, having documentary days, and creating Spotify playlists. So if you haven't got that Homeschool Hygge checklist, I encourage you to do that. Definitely let me know if you have any questions or thoughts in the comment section. And definitely one of the things I wanted to share with you, because I've been asked a few times, is how do we supplement our brains at this time of year? So you've heard this probably at some point about vitamin D, that we need our vitamin D supplements, and I am a strong proponent of that. So interestingly, in the research in the last couple of years, there are research studies coming out, scientific studies, double-blind, randomized controlled trials, the ones that make it into medical journals that like my husband would read, and they are revealing that it helps to augment our nutrition, our fuel for our brains, when we're taking omega-3s, vitamin Ds, possibly a multivitamin. At this time of year, there's so many other options, especially with illness or a virus. But check out different supplements if you're curious about that. I can go into specifics. Actually, that is also in my book. I even speak to perimenopause supplements in my book and have practical experience too. I have a daily affirmations list. That's one of the most popular downloads on my website. And it was a list of affirmations that I recreated for the homeschool mom. It came from mythoughtcoach.com for moms, and it really is us deciding how we want to show up in our homeschools with very specific sentences or declarations, perspectives, ways of thinking about our children, about our lives, and about ourselves. So if you'd like that, I can get that to you as well. Self-care checklist. If you haven't got a self-care checklist already, have you really been around me? It's hard to know. Anyway, I've got a self-care checklist too. And the last thing that I would say is support. You want support, whether that is through the Homeschool Mama support group, Patreon. I have a Homeschool Mama support group that is in support of my podcast efforts, but also is a place where I can connect with you. If you would like to join, it's about $10 a month, and you'll access 2 hours of coaching, of support, of whatever you need to support your homeschool and your homeschool mom life. So join me there, because I'd love to meet you, get to know you better, and know how to support you practically. In the upcoming months, I'm going to be offering a restorative, recreative retreat for homeschool moms. So if you would like to work with me for, it's a 4-week retreat online, a virtual retreat, where we can get practical about the challenges that you might have, but also about capturing all the things, all the different elements, the values, the priorities that you have, and begin to incorporate that more into your regular homeschool mom life. So that means creating margins in your day so that you can figure out what is your source of creativity, who are you outside of your homeschool mom role. It also is helping you to reimagine how you're homeschooling and why you're homeschooling the way you're homeschooling, and if it really is aligning with your true values. And then, of course, we're going to do some practices or, just different activities. They're going to help you dig deep into things that aren't working, to shift perspective, to make them work again. So I'm looking forward to that. And we're going to do that as a group, if people would like to do it, with 2 to 4 maybe people in a virtual group once a week. Or I would offer it one-on-one. And I have found that though it is more expensive as a one-on-one coaching program, it is always more effective. I generally value those moments with other homeschool moms. I feel truly blessed to be able to share in your stories. Your stories are treasures for me. And if I have learned anything through these last few years, it's myriads of things. I've learned from you as a homeschool mom, your journey, your unique stories, in ways that, well, you can learn about it when you're listening to my podcast, because sometimes I'm processing things without ever mentioning people's names or suggesting their identities. But I'm learning all sorts of things through all of you as well. There are benefits. If I were to have gone back into my early homeschool days, by the way, I'm taking these on and off, not obsessively, but because I don't want that light reflecting back at you. If I could go back to my early homeschool years, there was one particular homeschool mom that was open to encouraging and mentoring. She did not homeschool the way I homeschooled. She did not have the same kids that I had. She didn't even have the same worldview that I had. But she loved homeschooling. She loved the lifestyle, and she saw its benefits. And she encouraged me. And she always gave me these cool little nuggets that I was like, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. Or, oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't I see that before? And just these moments that I had with her each week, they were priceless. Now, interestingly, she's a grandma and she is still homeschooling. And that is pretty cool. But if you're looking for that kind of mentoring, if you're looking for that kind of support, that is why I'm here. Okay. So I'd love to hear your further thoughts about Hygge, how you can incorporate it into your homeschool days. Love to hear about it. Love to have a chat with you. So schedule a time with me. I think it's Tuesdays and Fridays that I booked off time to connect. It has been a pleasure hanging out with you. And I hope you and your family are well. And as I say on the podcast, I hope that you can turn all your homeschool challenges into your homeschool charms. You've got this, girlfriend.